So we're live. Welcome to our webinar. And you're probably here for one of two reasons. So the first is that you're really into goals and goal setting. So when you heard about a webinar that was related to achieving goals, you signed up and you thought it would be fun. The other half of you may be here because you've tried to do goal setting in the past, or you've done New Year's resolutions and they haven't worked out so well. And perhaps it's actually a combination of the two, like myself. I have experienced both setting big goals and having big dreams for all the things that I was going to do with my horses, like training my horses together at Liberty, and do flying lead changes together. And I was going to work at it every day until it happened, and obviously those big goals have not happened. I've also some really big goals, like I wanted to do a 3-6 jumper course with a specific by the end of the year, or I wanted to be able to through a certain jumping grid with a good solid position, and I was able to achieve those things. So the kind of unspoken truth around goals and goal setting is that a lot of people obviously don't achieve what they really want to. And this is true across different areas of life, but it's also true for us as riders and equestrians. A lot of us have personalities where we've got a lot that we want to do, and we have big expectations of ourselves and all the things that we want to work on and improve and do with our horse, and it can be frustrating to think about everything we want to do and not get there. So that's why we're here for the webinar today. A little bit about myself. My name is Callie King, and I'm a trainer and a riding instructor, and I also publish a weekly video show. So I've been publishing this show for a number of years, and it's basically a short weekly video on all things horses and training and riding. And in my own work with horses, I've really developed a fascination with behavior. So with the horses that come here to my farm, I work with a lot of horses that have some kind of behavior problems. And through working with the behavior problems, what I've come to realize is that a lot of the things that we work with on our horses, the way that we train and the principles that we follow in training our horses, have a lot of similarities to our own behaviors. So before I go any further, I'm just going to check our feed here, and I'm going to check in on the comments. So also a big thank you to our sponsor, HeyNet. Thanks to everyone that's on already. Hippologic, thank you for the questions. I'm going to definitely get into questions throughout the session today, and then we'll go through as many at the end as we have time for. If you're on, and you can just let me know if you're able to see this okay, that would be awesome. And we've got Julia that's kind of running the back end. How are we looking? I'm watching the feed here, and it looks like we've got a little bit of an issue.
It's telling me everything's streaming fine.
So if you're on, and if you can hear me and you're in the chat, just let me know. Do you have access to the chat on your end? Actually, it may just be on my end. Are you watching it on a browser? And it looks like it's okay? No?
It's skipping, but YouTube's telling me that everything's streaming and that the health of the stream is good. I don't know.
I'm going to just pause the audio for a second while we take a look at the tech stuff.
Okay, we're back.
All right, I think we are back up and running. Sorry about the technical glitches. Our internet, I swear, works perfectly until every time that we go to run a webinar, and then somehow the gremlins just get to it and it starts getting glitchy. So I'm going to start from the beginning since I'm not sure when everything started getting a little techy. And I'm also going to be watching the comments because now I've got my iPad here that Funny is a little bit more reliable. So if you start to have any issues with hearing me or with seeing me, just put them in the comments. I'm going to try to keep watching that. Looks like it works. Awesome. All right, so as I was saying, you're probably here watching this webinar for one of two reasons. So first, either you're really into setting goals and you're really into making plans. So when you saw a webinar about achieving writing goals, you thought it sounded like fun. Or you might be here because you've had some bad experiences with setting goals and then feeling like you can't achieve them, and maybe doing New Year's resolutions and then being really disappointed in yourself for not being able to actually make that happen. So, of course, we all know that a lot of us have big things that we want to achieve and goals that we set for ourselves that we actually never end up being able to accomplish. So for myself, I've had a combination of both of those two categories that I mentioned earlier. I've set some really big expectations for myself of things that I wanted to accomplish, like I mentioned, having my whole herd of horses, being able to, jump courses together at Liberty, and I was going to work on it every day until I had them going. And of course, that didn't actually end up happening, but I've also set some really good specific goals for myself about wanting to be in a certain class at a certain horse show by the end of the year, or being able to go through a jumping grid at a different height that I have been able to accomplish, along with a lot of other goals that I've set. So a little bit about myself is my name's Callie King. I'm a trainer and a riding instructor, and I also publish a weekly video show. And on that show, we talk about all things horses and riding and training and horse care. But one of my kind of personal fascinations as I've worked more with horses is behavior. So a lot of the horses that come here to my farm for training come in because they have some kind of a behavior problem. And I'm really fascinated with understanding how training works and how behavior change works. And it's actually very similar for our horses and for us. So the basic principles of behavior, how we learn, how we develop habits and patterns, and how we can change that is honestly the same for what we do with good training principles for our horses, and also what we can do for ourselves. So that's why I'm here for the webinar today, and very grateful for HeyNet, who is our sponsor. And right now we're publishing on where you're probably watching now, which is our live page where I'm able to see the comments. And then we're also broadcasting on YouTube as well. So if you're watching this from YouTube, welcome. So as I mentioned earlier as well, I'll be watching the comments here for questions, and I'll try to be taking in some questions as we go through this, and then I'll also answer questions at the end. So for HippoLogic, thank you for hanging in with all the technical issues and also for your questions, and I'll definitely get to them through our session today. So what we're going to cover in today's session is three main things. The first, we're going to talk about the difference between goals and resolutions. The second thing is we're going to talk about what actually makes a good goal that we set. And then finally, my favorite part is 5 steps to accomplish any goal that you want to set for yourself, for riding or even for other goals that you might have. So what you want to have as we are going through the session today is I would really recommend getting a piece of paper or grabbing a notebook and a pen or pencil, because it has been a proven fact that when you write down your goals and when you write down your plans to accomplish that goal, which we're going to work out through our session today, those things that you write down have a much higher likelihood of actually happening. So grab a piece of paper, or grab a notebook so that you can work through this with me. So the first thing that I want to talk about is the idea of goals versus resolutions. So I love goal setting. I love this time of year, January, where everyone's thinking about what they want to do and what they want to accomplish, and it's a time for both reflecting and also kind of dreaming big. So I love goal setting, but I don't like resolutions, and there is a distinction between the two. So to me, a resolution is something that someone resolves to do. So if we take a really common one, is get healthy. You want to eat better and I want to get healthy. But even just the meaning of the word resolution, it's resolving to do something. It's like trying to force yourself that you want to go out and you want to do this and you want to become this. But when we try to force and we try to like push ourselves towards something, I think we tend to meet a lot more resistance. But a goal, on the other hand, is more based on dreaming big and thinking about what we want to do in the future and thinking about maybe big ideas that we have for ourselves. So that's why I like goal setting so much better than simply resolutions. So as we go through the different kind of little processes today, we're really going to be focusing on that idea of goals. So things that are exciting to you, things that you really want to accomplish, and then breaking them down to figure out exactly how we can do that. So we're going to start out with a few kind of reflective questions. And I've got 3 of these questions for you. And after we go through these, you're going to put in the comments a goal or something that you're thinking about, that you want to do, something that you want to improve, and then we're going to refine that. So the first question to ask yourself is, what are you already proud of? So when you think back on maybe the last year, maybe the last few years, or if we're focusing on riding and perhaps you just started riding recently, maybe you're thinking about just the last few months. But what have you already done that you're proud of that made you feel good? And then the second question is, what's a mistake that you may have made that you want to avoid in the future? And for mistakes, especially with our riding example, don't think about something as specific as, I always lean forward and I've got to stop leaning forward, or I always pull on the reins but I'm not supposed to. Instead, think about it more as, I started going to this different trainer thinking that it would be better and that, she would push me more and I would move ahead faster. But actually, I feel like my confidence has taken a little bit of a hit since I started doing that. Or maybe a mistake is something like, I thought that I would be better off leasing this horse, but it hasn't been a great experience and I probably should have just kept on going riding the different lesson horses in the program. So that's what you want to think about when you ask yourself and you reflect on what's a mistake that maybe you've already made that you want to consciously avoid going forward. And then the next thing is, what can you let go of? And I actually love this one because it's not normally something that we would think about when we're thinking about setting goals, but it's a really good one because especially in riding, there's a lot of things that we might feel we're supposed to do or that we have to do, that we've got to be able to ride this certain horse, or we've got to go out and show. That's just what you do. When you get to this certain riding level, then you should be out showing, or you should be out trail riding, and you should be confident with a group out trail riding. Whatever it is, think about some of the things that maybe you've either been working towards, or maybe some of the things that you've kind of beat yourself up about a little bit because you're not already out doing that, or you don't already feel that confidence. And is it really something that's important to you, or is it something that you can just let go? The thing with riding is we have to remember it's supposed to be fun. It's a hobby. And if we let everyone else's kind of expectations of what we're supposed to do rule what we're working towards, then our goals aren't going to be something that are actually important to us and that actually pull us forward. So that's the third reflective question, is what can you let go of? So I realize that we're going through this a little quick, but you probably came into this session with some ideas of something that you wanted to do or that you wanted to improve. And then as you've thought through these questions, and you can take more time afterwards to go a little bit deeper, but I want you to put in the comments something that might be a goal for you. And then, as I said, in the next little segment, we're going to work on refining that for you. So I'm going to pull up my comments again. And welcome again to everyone that's on. I see we have another person here in the chat roll comments, Miss Jessica. Welcome, and we've probably got quite a few of you watching the stream on YouTube, and I don't have the YouTube comments in front of me. So I'm just taking a moment to actually read back and look at your comment from earlier, Hippologic. So is to teach my horse to ignore other horses in the arena. Good, that's actually a good one. And I know that is related to the question that you asked earlier. So I will keep checking back if anyone else wants to enter a comment here, but I wanted to go into what actually makes a good goal. So if you've gone through any goal setting frameworks before, you've probably heard of SMART goals, which kind of give you some attributes of what a good goal is, or you might have heard other kind of systems for going through goal setting. But the things that I think are most important for us to think about when we're looking at riding related goals is, first, what's a goal that would be specific, that would be measurable, and that would be time bound. So I think these are the three kind of most important things for nailing down a goal, if you will. And we can do these for horse related goals, even for things that are more like feeling based. So I know for a lot of riders, a common goal or a common thing that they want to improve is just the way that they feel around the horse. Like, we want to feel more confident, or we want to feel more comfortable, or we just want to feel better and feel more balanced. But if you're thinking along those lines for what you want to improve or for your goal, I would encourage you to thinking about where. So is it riding in the arena? Is it out on the trail? What do you want to improve? So think of a specific gait or a specific exercise or a pattern that you want to improve. And then if you ride somewhere where maybe you're riding different horses, you can also think about which horse, because a goal for one horse might be different than a goal for another horse, even on just a riding skills level. So for example, on one horse, you might be really comfortable doing walk, trot, canter, and jumping low courses, while on another horse, you might only be comfortable at the walk and trot. Maybe because he's a little bit more of an anxious forward type. Maybe it's because he's just got a really different movement that you don't feel like you've quite figured out yet. Doesn't matter what it is, but to get specific with your goal, think about where is it? Think about how can you think what exercises do you want to do, and then which horse. So to take this to your example, Sandra, that's easier. To take this for your goal of teaching your horse to ignore other horses in the arena, you could make this even more kind of tangible and give different steps to it by thinking about it. First, it might just be one horse in the arena. and then it might be 2 horses and then 3. You kind of work up to it. Or you might even work first on days where your horse is already a little bit calmer going into it. And then later you're going to progress to days where, for whatever reason, whether it's weather or other things, other distractions going on, you're going to work on it then. So whenever we're training something with a horse, and also when we're thinking about improving something in ourselves, we always want to do it in baby steps. So think about kind of the lowest level that you can work at with that thing, and then how you can progress from there. So the next thing about feeling goals and how to kind of make them a little bit more measurable is if you're working on confidence and you want to feel more confident with your horse, when you're with your horse, there's a scale, kind of a scale of like 1 to 10. And 1 can be that you feel no anxiety at all, and you feel really comfortable and confident. And a 10 could be that you're feeling really nervous and uptight. So on that scale of 1 to 10, start to kind of keep a little record of where you're at. So maybe one day with your horse you feel like you kind of stay at a 5 or a 6. You just have a little bit of that anxiety and you're never completely comfortable. But then another day you might be at a 4, or another day you might be up at like a 7 or an 8. So a way that you could take a kind of objective goal of something like I want to feel more confident is to make it measurable by kind of rating your feelings on that scale and then saying I want to be a 3 when I'm with my horse consistently. So time-bound goals, or taking a goal and putting a time constriction on it, is really helpful, but here's how I would consider this for horse-related and riding-related goals. It's a little bit of a judgment call. So when we're riding and when we're working with our horses, we have to kind of take things on such a situational, we have to just take things day by day. So I would encourage you to come up with your goal, make it specific, make it measurable, and then say kind of that time frame that you want to achieve it in. Like, I want to do this by next year, or I want to do this in 2 years. But then kind of set that and then forget it. So don't constantly measure yourself to how well am I doing? Am I going to accomplish this by my deadline? Just kind of set that intention as you write down your goal and then just let it go. Because if we get too caught up with something being really time bound, we can end up putting more stress and pressure on ourselves as we're working to try to get there. So just set it and then forget it. All right, so what I want to get into next is a little bit more of what I think is the fun stuff, is actually having your goals and making them happen with 5 steps. So I just saw your comment come in, Jessica, that my goal is to ride a dressage test as I do at home. I ride so very different from the fear of failure. That's a really good one. And if you can, a way that you could take that and kind of break it down for yourself step by step is, it's a perfect goal to set because I think it's very measurable for you, and you could add a time frame, whatever feels appropriate. But then in order to kind of help yourself measure and see that improvement, is you could keep a little bit of a record each time that you go out to a show. And like I just mentioned about kind of that scale of rating the way that you feel on, as far as your level of confidence, your fear level, rate it, and then just try to improve it by a little bit the next time, and work with different strategies that help you improve it. So normally anything that just makes us relax and feel better is going to help in situations like this. So things like deep breathing, things like visualizing the nice test. When something starts to go wrong, kind of make that habit in yourself. We're going to talk about habits. Make the habit in yourself that when something goes wrong, it triggers you to just take a few deep breaths, because something as simple as that can actually make the biggest difference in helping you start to really feel better. And that's actually the thing with learning in general, is that positive reinforcement is really, really powerful. It's something that I use a lot in my training with horses, and especially with horses that come in with maybe some emotional baggage or some bad history and some bad experiences. But it also works much better for people to learn as well. So there was a really interesting study done at the University of Wisconsin. And they took, it was back in 1982, and they took a group of bowlers and they split them into two groups. They videotaped their games, and with the one group, they edited those videos to show only the worst parts of their game. So basically all the mistakes that they made. With the other group, they also edited the videos, but they edited those videos to show only the best parts of those players' games. And then what they did is they instructed each group to watch their videos and to focus on either all the mistakes and like don't make that mistake again, or to focus on the things that they were doing well and to keep improving whatever it is that they were already good at. And the group that focused on what they were doing well and how they could further improve it, improved their bowling games, their bowling scores by twice as much than the other group. So I love that study ever since I found it, because I think it's such a good actual proof that not only does positive reinforcement make the learning experience more fun, but that it also is effective as a learning tool, and that you can use it on yourself. So you don't necessarily, you should be with an instructor that is positive and makes the experience fun and rewards good things, but you can start to use positive reinforcement just on yourself in your own self-talk. So what we're going to talk about next is I'm going to move back to the whiteboard, and we are going to go over habit change. And we're going to start talking about these 5 steps that I mentioned to actually making your new goals a reality. And then I'll get to questions. So if you happen to be just jumping in on this webinar from wherever, I'm Callie. This is sponsored by HeyNet, and we're talking about achieving your riding goals. So whenever we have an outcome that we want to have happen, when we have something that's a goal, what really makes that happen is the habits that we do. And a habit is just something that we do on a regular basis. It's basically a behavior. So earlier I mentioned that as a trainer, I am really fascinated with behavior and understanding how behavior works, how new behaviors are learned, and how old behaviors and old patterns are changed. Because really, when we're training a horse, that's all we're doing. And when we're trying to make a goal happen for ourselves, it's basically the same thing. Because in order to change our outcome, we have to change what we're doing on a regular basis, and that is just all about creating new habits for ourselves. So an example of this, we used the example of health and setting the goal that one wants to have better health, or they want to eat healthier. So let's just say they want the outcome of better health. So if we think of some different really specific habits that are going to make that happen, one is maybe walking 20 minutes every morning. Another habit could be eating a healthy breakfast instead of grabbing a Dunkin' Donuts on the way into work. Another habit could be getting a full 7 or 8 hours of sleep every night instead of 5 hours one night, 6 the next, and maybe 4 the next. And another habit could be drinking enough water. Drinking the recommended 8 glasses of water a day. So we have these little things that it's a small action, and if we just eat a good breakfast every now and then, it's probably not going to do a whole lot for our overall health. But when we start to do these little things consistently, and we start to combine them, that's when we get a real change. And the same thing happens for our riding. So for example, if our goal, the outcome we want, is just even simply to improve our riding. So I'm going to keep it really broad because you can insert in here whatever your goal was. Like for Jessica, your goal of wanting to ride the dressage test at home, riding the dressage test away as good as you do at home, you can think about here. Or for Sandra, your goal of wanting to work with your horse on being better behaved and being calmer when there's other horses in the arena, you can kind of think of the same thing here. And then some just general ideas that we might do for improving our riding, whatever that is we're going to want to ride more often. We may want to do something like journaling. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. I think journaling is a great practice. I've mentioned it a few times here. We might want to do something that involves learning. So improving our knowledge, our skills, maybe reading books, watching videos. And there's probably some key exercises that we already know that we just need to actually start doing on a regular basis. Like for Sandra's horse that doesn't like being in the arena with others, it could be as simple as he, needs to kind of get out there and get in the arena a little bit more often. And he needs to do it at those baby steps that we talked about, where first maybe he's just standing in the middle and then he's walking around, and then you can reinforce him. I'll actually get into some more specifics as we get to the end here, because I have some really good ideas for you. But it might be then that you reinforce him, you give him a reward when horses come really close. So he starts to associate that as being a good thing instead of a bad thing. So just key exercises that you think of that you may already know that you need to practice. It's just how do you start doing them on a more consistent basis. So now we get into the fun stuff. This is the 5-step process. So the first thing that we have to do is consider your goal. So we just talked about that here. I kind of used this broad one, but whatever your specific one is, you've got to consider your goal. The second thing is, what do you need to do? So what are these different habits that would be good that you think would get you closer to reaching this goal? And then the next thing is, how can you make it easy? So how can you take this habit that you thought about and how can you make this as easy as possible so that you can do it, without a lot of effort, and also so that once you do it, you have that positive reinforcement, basically that reward of accomplishment. And then what can be your cue and what's going to be the reward? So this has to do with something that's called a behavior loop. And whenever we have a behavior, I'll do it up here, we have the behavior. And if you think about this from an example for your horse, it might be a little bit easier to understand. So let's say the behavior for the horse is moving around his stall and starting to neigh. And the cue for that is when somebody walks in the barn because he expects to be fed. So the cue is person walks in the barn. That triggers the behavior of the horse starts walking around his stall, stamping, pawing. And then for the horse, that behavior is rewarded by food comes. And the same thing kind of happens for us, but we can be a little bit more conscious about what our cues are and what our rewards are. A lot of this does happen unconsciously. It develops whether we know this or not, but when we're aware of it, we can start to choose these things. So my favorite example for this is by a professor at Stanford who actually kind of developed a lot of this system. His name is B.J. Fogg, or developed this framework. And he's a computer scientist, but he also studies and he talks about and he writes about habit change. And he uses a really good example of if you wanted to start flossing your teeth, the best way to do it, the best way to actually create change, as he's proved now, is instead of going out to floss your whole mouth every time, think about every time that you brush your teeth, you're just going to floss one tooth, and that's it. So you thought about the goal, you thought about the habits, and you start flossing. How can you make it easy? Just one tooth. What's the cue? It's when you put your toothbrush away. And what is the reward? It's kind of twofold. You can think about actually giving yourself a reward, like, yay, giving yourself kind of the little pat on the back. But often when we set out to do something and we actually do it, even in a really small way, that in itself is rewarding for us. So that hopefully gives you a little idea of how this kind of works. So let's go through it for each of these examples, and I think that'll give you a better, clearer idea of how this works. So if our main goal is this broad thing of I want to improve my riding, and to do that, we think we should probably ride more often. But let's face it, you want to ride more often. It'd be easy to say, as a resolution, I'm going to ride 4 days a week for an hour. But honestly, for a lot of our schedules, that doesn't necessarily happen. So to make it easier, what if you could be achieving success by just going to the barn 3 times a week? Doesn't matter if you ride, doesn't even matter if you get your horse out. You just go to the barn, you walk in the barn, you give your horse a little pat, a little scratch, and then you leave, and you've accomplished what you set out to do. And then think of a cue for what's going to actually spur you to do that. So maybe it's Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday afternoons. When I finish up work, I just go straight to the barn. And then your reward is probably just going to be the accomplished feeling, the achievement of actually doing what you said that you were going to do. But you can even give yourself a little bit more of a actual reward by maybe having, this is a funny one, but it actually does work, is giving yourself like a little piece of chocolate, a little piece of favorite food when you go somewhere. Or it could just be the reward of seeing your horse. But what happens when you start to do this and you start to develop the habit of going to the barn is soon you'll probably think, well, I'm here, I'm just going to pull out my horse and I'm going to groom him. And then next time, you know what, I'm going to get on just for a few minutes because I have a little time. And then before you know it, you're in the habit, you've developed the habit of getting to the barn, and now you're actually riding 3 times a week, where before maybe you went once a week or maybe not even that often. So another example is for learning. If you decide that to improve, you want to do more learning, you want to read, you want to watch videos. What if, instead of thinking you got to do like a whole book a week or something big, you just did 10 minutes each day? And you decided that after lunch, I just pull out this book, I get to read for 10 minutes, and then boom, I'm doing what I said I was going to do, I'm moving forward, and you start to get that momentum of creating the new habit. Next example is journaling. Now, the reason that I love journaling so much is there is so much power in not only writing down what we want to do and the idea of writing down goals, but there's also a lot of power in being able to go back and see kind of where you came from. So when we're making these small incremental changes that are needed to actually achieve big things, it can feel like we're not getting anywhere, like we're not making any progress. But when you journal, you can look back, you can see where you were, and you start to get a lot more of a feeling for how far you've come. So again, keep it simple. Maybe it's 1 page after every ride. Maybe it's less than that. Maybe it's 3 bullet points of what went really well, what you want to try differently next time, and your favorite part of the ride, something that you're really grateful for from the ride. Something that you could use for your cue is keep the journal in your tack box, or keep your journal in the dash of your car. And then again, you get the reward of getting it done, and you can even give yourself another little reward if you want to. And then our last one here is practice key exercises. So this is what we talked about. There's probably some things that you know you should be doing, but you just don't get them done regularly enough to actually get the benefit. So one of the exercises that I mentioned this for you, Jessica, with changing your confidence level and helping with that fear of failure, is simple breathing. I find that breathing is something that so few people actually think about and are conscious of, but I know for me it's made a big difference in my riding, in the way that I like my skill level riding and my ability to do things, but also in just the way that I feel. I feel better. I'm not as easily triggered by, anxious horses as I once was, and it's just a great exercise. So a specific way that I kind of tell people that they can practice this is to practice what's called belly breathing or lower diaphragmatic breathing. And it's basically just when you inhale, you expand into the lower part of your lungs, so you kind of let your belly go out. And then when you exhale, you pull that back in. So a great way to start practicing this is to just do one lap of the breathing exercise when you start your ride. So the cue can become, as soon as I mount up, as soon as I'm on my horse, I just start breathing and I just do one lap of that. And all of a sudden you're starting your ride on a completely different feeling, probably for both you and your horse, than maybe you were in the past. And then the reward for good breathing, and for a lot of other exercises too, is just that you feel better as soon as you start doing it. So these are the 5 steps to think about in order to change your habits. So to review what we've talked about from the beginning, and then I'm really excited to take your questions. So as I'm reviewing, what I would love for you to do is to, hopefully you've been writing some things down as you've been kind of thinking about how this could apply for you. And right now I'd love to know just one new habit. Maybe it's something I mentioned here, maybe it's something totally different. If you've got a specific issue and you can't think of any habits, put that in the comments and I can help you think of some in the next few moments, but start putting those in the comments. So our wrap up from what we did today was, the first thing is, remember that there is a difference between goals and resolutions. So instead of resolving that I am going to do this, instead think about using those reflective questions of, what are you proud of? What did you have fun with in the past? What are mistakes that you want to avoid in the future? And what are things that you could just let go of that are maybe expectations of other people that aren't really important to you? But using those questions, think about what excites you, what's a goal, what's something that you want to accomplish, something that's going to pull you towards action instead of having to force yourself to go out and do it. And then the second thing that we went over was what makes a good goal. So for this one, remember that you want to keep it specific. So think about like where and what, and you want it to be measurable. So even if it's kind of a feeling goal, you can start to give yourself a little rating scale and then use that to measure your progress. And then also a time-bound goal is a great thing to have. And don't get too hung up with this with riding, but set a time, forget it, and see what happens. You might be surprised how when you kind of set that intention, how big of a difference that makes. And then finally, we talked a little bit about how the process actually happens, how behaviors and habits are connected to goals. We talked about the little thing called the behavior loop, how this works for riding, and then we went through these 5 steps of, once you've got your goal, you've brainstormed some habits that you want to do, and then the next few steps of how can you make it easy, what kind of cues can you use so that you remember to do it on a consistent basis, and how are you going to reward yourself to bring in that positive reinforcement, which really spurs our learning. So I'm going to sit back down here and take a look at the comments. So I saw the one, this is from quite a bit earlier, but I'm assuming this is Sam from HeyNet, and she said my goal is to get in the saddle more this one. So hopefully the little thing that I mentioned, the little framework for just go to the barn, like make it small, think I'm just going to go to the barn, start with that, be helpful. Because honestly too, since riding is fun, since we enjoy spending time with our horse, it's honestly not all about the riding. You know, I usually talk about riding because when we think about our horse, a lot of times that's what we think about doing, but we can get so much enjoyment out of just spending time with our horse or doing a little bit of work on the ground. I really enjoy doing clicker training and positive reinforcement training, and there's so much that you can do with that in a very short time. So just going to the barn and having fun with your horse can be huge. Sandra, I thought I recognized from your title that yes, that you did positive reinforcement. I think we've communicated before. So I'm going to scroll back to Sandra's question in the beginning, and it deleted part of your original question because once it gets a certain number of comments, it doesn't show all of the earlier ones. So I'm going to I'm just going to start talking about what my earlier thoughts were on the problem that you're having with your horse in the ring, just some things that I've done, and then if I'm going a direction that doesn't apply completely to you, just leave another comment here. But so from what I took from what you described earlier, she just doesn't do real well with other horses in the arena. And the most success that I've had with horses doing this is I would look to reward, to reinforce standing still and like happy ears. So I would just kind of start with that, ears forward. And we would start with having someone else ride that was, you know, like in on it. So they were working with me, and they would ride by. And if the horse got a little bit crabby, I had them go far enough away that it wasn't like a dangerous situation. So I could just kind of ignore that and just keep asking them to stand still. And then when I would get even just a little bit of a moment where they would be more calm, more cheerful looking, then I would reinforce. And of course, once I started kind of playing that game, so to speak, I found that they got a lot more focused on what we were doing. So they got a lot more focused on then me and trying to figure out, you know, what I was reinforcing and what they were doing that was earning them the rewards. And then I would have the other horse just come closer and closer. And it did seem to work. I mean, I can't say that, because I think when horses have some of this social interaction, it is just that. It can be a little complicated because we don't necessarily understand all the social dynamics that go along. But it definitely seemed to help to create a connection between other horses going by and the fun game of I'm getting reinforced when this other horse goes by. So what started happening is when the other horses would pass, instead of this particular horse that I was working with tensing, and what he would do is he'd either go to, you know, throw a kick or reach over and bite the other horse. Instead of him doing that, it's almost like the other horse would cue him starting to look to me for like, okay, what are we doing? You know, I'm here, I'm being good, where's my reward? Which I really liked. And so it worked well with him. And then we worked up to where I was riding him, and like we would have the other horse pass this way, we would pass this way. We would pass first at the walk and then eventually at the trot, you know, then I'd have the other horse cantering by. So we just slowly kind of increased it. And I just kept rewarding for good behavior essentially each time that the other horse was passing, and it worked really well for him. So that would be my thought. Let me check back to see if that helped you at all. All right. Well, it looks like we have, with the tech glitches, been on for about an hour. So thank you so much for tuning in for this webinar. I really enjoy doing these, and I hope that you enjoyed them as well. Thanks to HeyNet for being our sponsor. And you can, if you want more free videos, go to crktrainingblog.com. I've got a bunch there. We're always doing little things. We've got a free online riding workshop going on right now with Wendy Murdoch, who's a trainer that I've worked with personally in the past, and now I've been working with her to create a course. And that's been a lot of fun as far as developing like habits and patterns. Wendy is great for understanding that and helping you create new ones on like a very little scale, like talking about just like little riding things. So we've got that going on at effortlessridingcourse.com. And again, thank you for tuning in. I will look forward to seeing you in the next webinar.